Meanwhile, in a guild in the kingdom of Blumen, Fuse, the guild master, reports that there is no sign that the Eastern Empire is preparing to attack. In front of him are the three adventurers Rimuru saw at the entrance of the cave before. A fighter called Cavell, a sorcerer, a girl called Aren and a thief called Dito. Fuse sent the three of them to check if Valdora is still in the cave and they confirmed he disappeared. Their next mission will be to investigate around the Great Jura Forest and see what is happening with the monsters there. Outside, while the adventurers are complaining about Fuse overworking them, a masked black-haired girl called Shizu approaches them and asks to accompany them to the forest. Aren immediately accepts and Shizu is grateful. A few weeks after they return to the goblin village, Rimuru shows Ranga a powerful new skill called Black Lightning. As soon as they arrived, Kaijin and the other dwarves started teaching the goblins how to make weapons, clothes, jewelry and houses. While Rimuru was gone, goblins from other villages heard about him and joined his village, expanding it from 100 to 500 goblins. Using his great sage skill, Rimuru finds out that orcs, lizardmen and ogres are currently competing over dominance in the great forest of Jura. In order to protect the goblins from those powerful monsters, Rimuru accepted them and gave all names. Because Rimuru forgot him in Dwargen Gabta to learn how to summon a Tempest Wolf and rode it back to the village. In order to escape from the dungeon, Rigger was promoted from Goblin Lord to Goblin King since he became the leader of the village elders who recently joined them. In the present, Rigger as the captain of the village's security reports that he saw suspicious human scouts in the forest. In the forest, Shizu and the three adventurers are running away from giant ants. Suddenly, Shizu takes out her sword and envelops it in flames with swordsmanship and fire spells. She quickly and skillfully kills all the ants. However, one of the ants gets back up, but Shizu is too exhausted to attack. Before the ant manages to attack her, a black lightning bolt hits the ant and kills it, making Shizu's mask fly away. Having killed the ant, Rimuru shows himself to Shizu and the adventurers and realizes Shizu is the person he saw in the elf's crystal ball. Taking Shizu and the others to the village, Rimuru and the goblins give them something to eat. After they finish the meal, they all formally introduce themselves to each other. The adventurers are impressed that Rimuru is the master of the village and thank him for rescuing them and giving them something to eat. While Shizu is eating, seeing her sitting style, Rimuru realizes she is probably from Japan. The adventurers' leader Cavell explains to Rimuru that they were sent by the guild to investigate the forest, and Rimuru lets them all stay in the village overnight. At sunset, Rimuru finds Shizu alone on a cliff overlooking the forest. Shizu realizes Rimuru is from Japan from the way he is talking and admits she is also from Japan. She tells Rimuru about her past. A long time ago, her hometown was in the middle of war and she was running away with her mother. Shortly after, some burning debris fell on her mother and killed her. Someone summoned Shizu to this world. In order to cheer her up, Rimuru uses a skill called thought communication. Shows Shizu his memories of living in Japan and how much the country changed for the better since she left. He tells her he wants to make this world one where everyone can live in peace, and she supports him. After Rimuru leaves, Shizu remembers the time when she was summoned. She woke up in a magic circle on the floor with an emotionless blonde man observing her. At first he thinks she is useless, but then decides to give her body to a powerful fire spirit called Ifrit. Suddenly, a parrot monster named Konica appears and Konica announces that he will defeat the blonde man who is actually a demon lord called Leon. In order to test Shizu, Leon tells Ifrit to take over her body. Using an incredibly powerful fire spell, Ifrit eradicates Konica. Completely satisfied with Shizu's results, Leon decides to take her in. Sometime later, Shizu sees her friend Perino in the forest together with a fox pup she rescued. When Perino takes the fox with her to Leon's castle, the fox starts growling at Leon as soon as it sees him. Thinking the fox as a threat, Ifrit takes control of Shizu, making her eyes turn red instantly. He burns both Perino and fox pup until nothing is left of them. Regaining control of herself, Shizu realizes what happened and starts crying in despair. In the present day, Shizu wakes up from a nightmare. Suddenly her eyes turn red, but she manages to suppress Ifrit's influence. Later that day, Shizu tells Rimuru that she have to go soon, so she doesn't cause any trouble for him. She tells him her goal is finding the man who summoned her, and admits that she is actually several decades old. When Shizu rejoins the adventurers, she suddenly starts acting strange and clutches her stomach. She starts screaming in pain. Her mask breaks and light starts pouring out of her, an explosion of fire. She flies into the air. Cave realizes that Shizu is actually the retired legendary hero of their guild, known as the Conqueror of Flames. Seeing what is going on, Rimuru tells Rigger to evacuate the villagers. In a vortex of flame, Shizuo's eyes turn red and she transforms into Ifrit, who summons 3 flying salamanders that start burning down the foundations of Rimuru's village. The adventurers know they are no match for him, but want to do their best to save Shizu anyway. Rimuru asks Ifrit what he wants, but Ifrit doesn't say anything and just throws a fireball at him. While the adventurers fight one of the salamanders, Rimuru summons Ranga and rides him. While Ranga is evading, the salamander's fire blasts. Rimuru uses his Great Sage skill to try and think of ways to beat them. When the Great Sage skill tells him that only magic attacks will work on spirits, Rimuru asks Aren to fire one of her Icicle Lance spells at him. Absorbing the Icicle Lance, Rimuru analyzes it and learns it. Jumping through the air on Ranga, he summons a large number of Icicle Lances to create an attack. He calls Icicle Shotgun, which he uses to defeat the 2 salamanders. However, the 3rd salamander approaches the 3 adventurers and self-destructs near them, defeating them. Rimuru tells Ranga to save the adventurers while he takes Ifrit on himself. Ifrit makes clones of himself that descend towards Rimuru. Using his Icicle Shotgun, Rimuru destroys all the clones easily, but Ifrit then makes a huge magic circle and envelops Rimuru in a massive vortex of flame. However, it turns out that the spell doesn't work on Rimuru at all, since he has temperature change resistance that nullifies fire attacks. Realizing he can easily beat Ifrit after all, Rimuru uses his thread magic to restrain him and then absorbs him, separating him from Shizu. Inside of Rimuru, Ifrit is helpless. A voice tells him he is no match for his friend Rimuru, and that he will now have to face him. It turns out the voice belongs to Valdora, who starts laughing. The next morning, Shizu wakes up in a bed and thanks Rimuru for freeing her from Ifrit. She decides to tell him her whole life story. She continued serving the Demon Lord until the hero appeared. After a battle between the hero and the Demon Lord abandoned his castle and left Shizu there as a guard. One day, the hero came to the castle. We can see that the hero is a black-haired girl with the same mask Shizu wore when she first met the adventurers. Shizu did her best to fight her, but the hero was so strong she couldn't beat her. After defeating Shizu, the hero asked her who she was and why she was there. Hearing her story, the hero told her everything will be alright and took her in. She gave her her mask and told her it will help her resist Ifrit's magic. From then on, Shizu traveled with the hero, learning more about the world, helping others in fighting. After a while, Shizu became known as the Conqueror of Flame. One day, the hero left her but told her they will meet again one day. Shizu decided to become stronger and spent the following decades helping people who are suffering. However, with time, her control over Ifrit weakened and she got scared of hurting her loved ones again. That is why she decided to retire and become an instructor at a school for other worlders in the kingdom of Ingrasa. She was happy there and one of her students even went on to become the Grand Master, the person who oversees all the guilds in the country. When she started feeling she won't be able to control Ifrit much longer, she decided to go on a journey to find the man who summoned her so she can ask him something. Taking a deep breath, Shizu tells Rimuru that she has a request for him. She wants him to eat her just like he ate Ifrit. Since she doesn't like this world, she doesn't want to become absorbed by it, and tells Rimuru her last request is to let her rest inside of him. Rimuru thinks about it for a second and accepts. Rimuru asks her what was the name of the man who summoned her. And she tells him it's Leon Cromwell, one of the most powerful demon lords. Shizu admits she wanted to ask Leon if he acknowledged that she existed and if the summoned kids she taught could be saved and returned to their world. Rimuru swears to her that he will find Leon and ask him those questions. With her last breath, Shizu thanks him and dies, turning into an older version of herself. Having realized Shizu has died, Rimuru absorbs her. Inside of Rimuru, Shizu reunites with the soul of her dead mother and dies in peace. When Rigard and the adventurers enter Shizu's tent, they see a naked girl inside. When she turns around, they see that she looks like Shizu but with blue hair. Rimuru explains what happened and tells them that he turned into Shizu after he absorbed her. Since they are going away soon, the 3 adventurers ask Rimuru to turn back into Shizu. When he does that, the adventurers tell him everything they wanted to say to Shizu before she died. Before they leave, Rimuru gives the adventurers new equipment and armor as parting gifts. The adventurers are delighted and they happily go back to their guild. Rimuru and Ranga bury Shizu's body and Rimuru swears he will find Leon Cromwell. In a dry wasteland somewhere, an orc collapses from exhaustion. A strange man with a bird mask approaches him and introduces himself as Gelmut. Giving him the name Geld, he tells him he will one day take possession of the great forests of Jura. Back in the village, Rimuru finds out he can use all of Ifrit's skills now, including body double. He immediately tries it out and realizes he is genderless in his human form. He also realizes he can finally taste food again now that he can transform into a human, so decides to eat dinner with the others. That night, Rigard returns from a patrol and tells Rimuru that monsters from deep inside the forest have been traveling near their village. Hearing this, Rimuru sends Ranga, Rigard and the rest of the hunting party to inspect the forest. Later, Rimuru returns to the cave where Valdora has been sealed in order to try out the skills he acquired from absorbing Shizu. Among others, he received a rare skill called Degenerate that can merge different skills together and make new skills. He also finds out that if he wears Shizu's mask, he can conceal his huge magic power and make himself seem like a normal human. Suddenly, Ranga uses his thoughts to contact Rimuru and tell him his party has been attacked. When Rimuru finds his friends in the forest, he sees 6 horn ogres attacking them. Everyone except Ranga and Rigard were put to sleep by one of the attacker's spells. Approaching the ogres, Rimuru apologizes to them in case his friends did something wrong. However, the red-haired ogre recognizes his mask and accuses him of killing their friends, which is why they want to kill him now. Seeing they can't be reasoned with, Rimuru sends Ranga to take on the pink-haired ogre while Rimuru fights the other ones. He first paralyzes the largest of the ogres with a spell, then restrains another one with his steel threads. He smashes the blue-haired ogre's sword with his body armor skill and knocks him out. While Rimuru tries talking to the red-haired ogre again, the old ogre cuts his arm off even though he had his body armor skill equipped. However, Rimuru simply reabsorbs his arm and regenerates it. Surprising the ogres, Rimuru decides to get serious and takes off his mask. Unleashing his magic, he conjures a huge vortex of black flame and destroys a large rock, demonstrating his overwhelming power. The red-haired ogre, who turns out to be the leader of the ogre clan, realizes Rimuru is stronger than him, doesn't let himself get intimidated. Suddenly, the pink-haired ogre stands between Rimuru and the others and tells the red-haired ogre that Rimuru isn't their enemy. The person they are looking for has used underhanded methods to make orcs attack their village, while Rimuru is powerful enough that he could kill them on his own. Hearing this, the red-haired ogre is willing to listen to what Rimuru has to say. Rimuru introduces himself, revealing that he is actually a slime and that his mask is a keepsake of his deceased friend. The red-haired ogre takes a better look at the mask and realizes it's different than the mask their enemy wore. He gets down on one knee and asks Rimuru and the others to accept his apology. Having made peace, Rimuru takes the ogres to his village. That night, Rimuru eats with everyone and enjoys the taste of good food for the first time since he was reincarnated. Talking to Kaijin and Rimuru, the ogres tell them that orcs attacked their village, killing everyone except the 6 of them. Even though orcs are supposed to be weaker than ogres, these orcs came in huge numbers and were equipped with human weapons and armor. The red-haired ogre saw a masked person working with them and suspects that the orcs have started working with one of the demon lords. Since the orcs might become a threat to Rimuru's village too, Rimuru asks the ogres to become his subordinates and together beat their common enemy. The next morning, the red-haired ogre decides to accept Rimuru's offer on the condition that the contract lasts until they beat the orcs. Gathering all 6 of the ogres, he starts giving them names. However, as soon as he names them, he loses consciousness. Rimuru wakes up with the ogres gathered around him and sees that they now look younger and more intelligent than before. He named red-haired ogre Benamru. The pink-haired ogre became Shuna. The purple-haired ogre became Shion. The old ogre became Hikaru. The gloomy blue-haired ogre became Swa. And the largest ogre became Kurobi. Because the ogres are so powerful, Rimuru spent all his magic after naming only 6 of them. In the middle of the great forest of Jura, there are marshlands where the lizardmen live. That night, the lizardmen report to their chieftain that the gigantic orc army has been sighted near their territory. The chieftain thinks that such a huge number of orcs can only be controlled by the orc lord, a unique, legendary monster. Since the orc army is twice as big as the lizardman's army, that chieftain sends his son, a flamboyant lizardman called Gabiru, to travel to different goblin villages and try to recruit them as reinforcements in Rimuru's village. Benamaru also tells Rimuru about the possibility of an orc lord existing. Before the orcs attacked, a strange man visited the ogre village. He wanted to name all the ogres, but they drove him away because they found him untrustworthy. As he was leaving, he cursed them all. Benamaru says the man's name was Gelmid and Rimuru realizes that Rigger told him his brother was given his name by someone called Gelmid. Meanwhile, Gabiru's party is traveling to different goblin villages and convincing their inhabitants to join their cause. On the way, Gabiru's subordinates are constantly praising him, leading him to believe that he should take over as the next lizardman's chieftain soon. A few days later, Rimuru starts giving the ogres different jobs while Shuna is making clothes for the villagers. Shion declared herself as Rimuru's secretary and bodyguard. However, Shuna wants to take care of Rimuru too, so they start a rivalry. Rigard appears and tells Rimuru that a group of lizardmen has arrived in the village. Gabiru makes a dramatic entrance and tells everyone he will make them serve under him so they can defeat the orcs together. But Rimuru and the others aren't impressed. Rimuru wants to unite with the lizardmen against the orcs, but he doesn't trust Gabiru. Gabiru thinks Rimuru is deceiving the goblins, the wolves, and the others and tells them he will defeat him for them. Because Gabiru insulted his master. Ranga gets angry and prepares to attack when Gavda suddenly appears. Getting an idea, Ranga tells Gabiru he will consider his offer to join him if he can defeat Gavda, and Gabiru arrogantly agrees. Gavda throws his spear toward Gabiru to distract him, jumps out from his shadow using the shadow movement skill, and kicks him in the neck, making him lose consciousness. Turning to the lizardman, Rimuru tells them he will consider helping them fight the orcs, but they won't serve them. He tells them to take Gabiru with them and leave for the day. Later, Sue returns from his patrol and tells everyone that the orc army is advancing toward the lizardman's territory. While they are discussing what to do about the orcs, Sue tells Rimuru that a dryad is looking for him. Suddenly, a dryad teleports into the room and introduces herself as a trainee. Since dryads know about everything going on in the forest, Trainee reveals that they have noticed that an orc lord appeared. However, the Dryad village isn't strong enough to take on the orcs, so Trainee looking for help from Rimuru's village. Benamora reveals that the orc lord has a skill called Starve that allows him and his army to devour everything in their paths and get stronger from it. In return, they all feel an endless hunger. Hearing this, Rimuru realizes the orcs' goal stealing the forest's monsters' powers by eating them instead of ruling over them. Trainee also says that the Dryads have confirmed that a powerful subordinate of the Demon Lord is behind the orc lord's appearance. Thinking Rimuru is strong enough to defeat the orc lord, Trainee once again asks Rimuru to help her defeat him. Thinking about it and consulting the Great Sage skill, Rimuru accepts her proposal and all his subordinates agree to help him. Since Gabiru is untrustworthy, Sue offers to visit the Lizardman's chieftain directly and asks him to fight with him. So Rimuru sends him there. Somewhere else Gabiru finally wakes up. He realizes a strange man with a clown mask is with the other Lizardman. His name is Laplace and he has come as a servant of Lord Gelmut, who was the one who gave Gabiru his name. He convinces Gabiru that his father is too weak to fight the Orc Lord and tells him he should go back into the marshlands and take over as the new chieftain. Meanwhile, the massive orc army is marching toward the Lizardman's territory. Before they get there, Sue arrives. He confirms the chieftain's theory about the Orc Lord and proposes that Rimuru's village join forces with the Lizardmen. When the chieftain hears the Dryads have personally asked Rimuru to help them, he accepts the proposal, realizing that Rimuru could be a strong ally to him. However, he first wants to meet Rimuru personally, and he makes a deal with Sue to meet up in 7 days. After Sue leaves, the chieftain gathers his army and tells them not to attack the orcs until reinforcements arrive from Rimuru's village. He doesn't want his soldiers to die for no reason and make the orc army more powerful. 4 days later, the orcs start invading and the lizardmen defend their country. But don't attack the orcs straightforwardly. Suddenly, Gabiru appears and visits his father. He doesn't agree with waiting for Rimuru's reinforcements and thinks that his father doesn't know what he is doing. Thinking he can lead the lizardman better than him, he forcefully takes over as the new lizardman chieftain. When he takes the chieftain's weapon, the vortex spear, he feels its power flowing into him. Meanwhile, Gabiru's subordinates have gathered every lizardman who didn't agree with the previous chief, and Gabiru announces to them that they are going to war with the orcs immediately. Meanwhile, the orcs continue advancing and the lizardmen ambush them. The powerful lizardman soldiers manage to kill some of the orcs, but then the other orcs start eating their corpses and grow stronger. While his father knows the true terror of the orc lord, Gabiru has no idea what he is facing. Thank you so much for staying until the end. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like if you want to see part 3. See you in the next video.